Welcome to the Emerging Screenwriters interview series. Today we are with...
Jason Goldberg.
Hi Jason, how are you?
Awesome. How are you doing, Sheena?
Good.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here. This is a series where we are interviewing screenwriters who are on their way up, essentially, and that's kind of where I feel like
that's
you
optimistic.
are on a fast track to just be so big that you can no longer accept these invitations to come.
I will never say no to you. Come on. This is so fun for me. I just, every day, all you want to do is just create and make great content with good people. And so for me, it's really about, maintaining these connections and growing with everybody, It's
Right.
really important.
So first off, I'm just going to do like a couple icebreaker things.
Sure.
No
What am I going to
curveballs.
bring to a picnic?
Yes! Yes! Okay. Wait, what was that question?
Oh, no, because you say...
You told me an icebreaker, and so what is that?
Yeah, because
like
you're
that
always
one.
supposed to say, what would you bring to a picnic? And so if your name starts with a J, or then you'd say, okay, Jam, and then, Shayna, you'd say, okay, and then you go around the room.
What do you bring to a picnic? That
What
is
would
a
I
good
really bring to a
icebreaker.
picnic?
Yeah, it doesn't have to start with J.
I've got a 4.5-year-old, so I probably bring a lot of Tylenol and Red Bull. I think that sounds good. Maybe a beer and eventually get yelled at by Beverly Hills Police.
You bring beer and then you just keep it for yourself.
Yeah, I would bring a brown bag and have a tall
Sure.
boy in there for me.
Nice.
Truthfully, I am a sucker for Uncrustables.
Oh,
those are lovely.
yes. Ugh, those
I'm a
will
child.
get you. Those will get you, though.
Oh yeah, there was a moment when Kroger's and Ralph's didn't have them, and I was kind of losing it. And I wasn't gonna make my own. It would
Right.
never.
Oh, it doesn't taste the same.
Oh no, it would suck. It would
If
be
you haven't
horrible.
had an Uncrustable, try it. They're absolutely addictive and delicious.
I couldn't even make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I'm one of those guys right now where it's just really gross, where I'm just trying to watch myself because I do have a kid and
Yeah.
working remotely. I literally have those bags of tuna fish where it's almost like in a thing of toothpaste and you have to take it out.
Yeah.
It's really disgusting. But I eat that every day.
This is
so
my life.
yeah,
Right.
this is what it's become. When you work remote and there's a pandemic and you don't get craft services and you're responsible for your
It's
own.
true. Tuna fish it is. What are you watching right now?
I love Atlanta. Atlanta's one of my favorite shows. I've been watching that since season 1. I just finished Mr. Harrington's Phone on Netflix. I just watched that.
I just heard about that. Is it good? Is it good?
It's an interesting take on just
Yeah.
doing paranormal haunting with modern technology.
Right.
Sutherland's awesome in it. I enjoyed it. I like that. I just saw Smile. Smile's fun. I love Barbarian. Barbarian's probably one of my favorite
I need
movies
to go
I've seen
see
this
that.
year. It is
Yeah.
incredible. I go into it blind.
I know.
Dude,
I don't want to know anything, and I have to go see it. It's on my list.
I love that one. I'm trying to think what else I've been watching. I always try to do the dramas, the thrillers, the horror shows, just so I know what is out there and what other people are.
I have to say,
Stepping up.
you are a very well-rounded watcher of things. You know information about everything. You throw out, oh, I just watched this. I'm I'll get glitchy because I'm wait, what? And I'm I almost want to. Well, we are recording you, but I want to write down what you're saying because half the stuff I'm I've never even heard of that, but I probably should know because
There's so much content out there
I know,
now
there's so
between
much.
Amazon, Netflix, Prime, Tubi. All these guys are making original content. Cinedigm with Screenbox. So it's just how do you absorb it? And I've actually got a list of movies and the dates they come out and TV shows and how many episodes they're going to be. So I know how much time I have to dedicate to it.
Wow.
Because I know that I need to keep writing every day, and you've got the day job, then you're working and prepping movies, and then you're writing new material. It just becomes to the point where you're you only have so many hours. So I'm okay, well, I know that this is going to be 8 hours. I'm also watching Reboot, and I highly recommend that on Hulu.
I need to see that too. Yeah, I heard it's great.
It's 25 minutes an episode. I know
Yeah.
it's 8 episodes. I'm cool, 4 hours of content if I break it down. And I'm
Right.
cool, if I do my day job, I watch 2 episodes of this, and I put 3 hours into this, I can still meet my deadlines for this.
Wow, I love that.
I drink a lot of Red Bull, have a lot of coffee. I like working.
You are high energy though.
I am. I think the saddest thing, since I became
For
a
being
parent.
a dad, you're high energy.
Well, I used to
buddy.
be a video gamer. I used to work at G4, and I would love playing video games. And the amount of time that you could eat up doing that, I'm so specific now. If there's one game, I get one game a year, and then you could play it then. But otherwise, it's just I feel the guilt if I'm not writing. I feel like those deadlines are weighing on top of me. Because if I'm not going to write this, or if I'm not going to shoot at this email, if I'm not going to create a pitch deck for something, then the only person I'm hurting is myself.
Right.
And there's only so much time, you could fall into that, oh, it's just one game. Oh, this thing just came out. Oh, downloadable content. Then you just kind of lose the track of time.
Right.
And then you miss deadlines, and then you're kind of like, well, it's November, Hollywood's shutting down, no one's going to be buying this anyway, might as well buy another game, and then that's that.
Let's go back to when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Was there a specific time that you knew you wanted to be a writer, or were you always writing?
I've got two stupid memories, and these are like my two favorite memories. I knew I wanted to work in television and film when I was a kid, and I was watching Mork and Mindy because I was a huge Robin Williams fan, and it was just so fun. Like, I was raised on like all the classic stuff from Twilight Zone, The Munsters, and all that. And Mork and Mindy was like the first time where I was just like, okay, it's funny, it's poignant, I love these characters, it's something I want to do. The second time I was like, I need to be in Hollywood, even though it's not really in Hollywood. Was I remember I was, I think, first grade, taking the bus to school, and our very, I don't know, inappropriate bus driver is the best way to put it, was playing the Howard Stern show. And I was introduced to a lot of awesome new ideas and characters, and it really kind of changed who I was, and I got hooked to the Howard Stern show. I haven't listened to it in years, but I was lucky enough to work there back in 2002, before they went to Sirius. And so I was working on the radio side, and I just remember like just being a kid on the bus, hearing these stories, hearing these characters. I was like, if people are getting paid to do this, this is what I want to do.
Where did you grow up, and then when did you move here and start, and how did you start in the industry?
I grew up in central New Jersey, and it was funny. I was always a writer, like doing things for like the local newspaper. I was doing the school newspaper. They actually had a radio program, and I was doing the radio stuff there. So I went from there, and I knew that I wanted to be, for me, I wanted to be the next Howard Stern. Howard Stern went to BU. I said, I'm going to go apply to BU. This is going to be awesome. And I got in early decision. And so I went for radio, broadcast journalism. I studied with friends that live out here too. I did a little bit of television work, but I was more in the journalism writing world in that vein. I always knew I wanted to be in the world of horror, thriller, more just genre stuff. And so I got my degree from there, and I like education. I went to Syracuse for my master's, and because a lot of my credits transferred over, I was there for 8 months. Wow. I got my master's degree, and then literally a week after that, I was on a plane out here because I aligned an internship through Syracuse with E, which then became interning, PAing, coordinating, associate producing, and producing series for them, and G4, and then going freelance.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot, but it was cool because it's like the way I was able to transition out of like the unscripted world into the narrative world. This is like, I don't recommend this, so look me in the eye, don't do this. I was able to make my first short film. I was crossing the street leaving Park La Brea, and a kid from BU was texting and driving, and he ran me over with his car. I was crossing, I had the little white guy waving me on saying, you're good to go, and I woke up underneath his truck. Ambulances and all that nonsense. And so sued him, all that stuff, and I took the money from the lawsuit to make my first short film. Because that's what you do, who wants to go to Hawaii? Who wants to do this awesome stuff? But I was like, I came out here to make movies, and so I did a short called Metamorphosis, which was a modern take on Kafka, about a young LGBTQ boy coming out to his dad, and his dad seeing him like a cockroach. It did well. It beat features for best horror film. I then produced a few more shorts, and I realized, wow, shorts are awesome. They're great to cut your teeth, but you don't make money doing it. And I'm like, at some point you want to, see success and a little bit of dollars and whatnot. And so I started writing features. I had a writing partner. We did our first feature together. It was a really, really cool premise. It was zombies on Titanic. The lucky ones drowned. It's like James Cameron's Titanic with zombies. It's awesome. But it's also a studio project and really expensive. And I knew that if we were going to do something, we had to hit the ground running and do something awesome. It made top 10 for Script Pipeline, which was really cool. And then I thought, well, at this point, I should probably just be writing by myself because I'm, it's great to have something to bounce off of. But if you're doing the majority of the work, or if you've got an idea and, maybe their ideas are not as, pardon my French, fucked up as yours, because when you write horror movies, you want to elicit emotional reactions from people, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether people are walking out. You just don't want people to see something that they've already seen before.
Sure.
And so sometimes that's where I get bored with projects, where I'm like, okay, I've seen this, or it's this take meets this, but what is that special thing that pops?
Right.
And so I just started writing by myself, and I made the hit list, the Young and Hungry list. ISA was nice enough in 2019 to make me one of their screenwriters to watch, which was really, really cool. Just this year, I placed in Big Break's top 3 for another project, and been lucky enough to produce and write a project that came out on Shudder called State of the Attic. And then just last month, we released Glorious, also on Shudder, with J.K. Simmons and Ryan Kwanten. So the way I figured this out is like I didn't come up from, you know, the inside of like an agency or, you know, an exec level. I came from the world of production and from the world of, I never really saw myself as an artist until I started getting hired to write scripts and then, or working with other, you know, young emerging writers and helping them get their ideas on the page and then cleaning it up, just because I understand everything from, I'm not going to say the structure thing because structure and format change, but I understand what a good read means.
Right.
I never studied, you know, screenwriting. I read a lot of screenplays.
Sure.
And so it's like, if I want to make a movie like The Evil Dead, well, then I might as well find The Evil Dead, you know? And so I'd find all the scripts and I'd do that. And I would just immerse myself in this world. And knowing that, okay, say, hypothetically speaking, I want to do a, let's say, the zombie Titanic script. I would just do all this research on Titanic. I already know plenty about zombies. Everybody knows everything about zombies. But what can you do about this script that can make it like different? And so it became more of a project about sickness on the script, but also class separation between the people in steerage and, you know, first class. And it did really, really well. And I try to, you know, when I come up with a premise or a concept, I ask myself, would I spend $50? Screw it. Would I spend $60 at an AMC all in? And even if, like, before I was married with a kid, would I take my date here? Would I go take a date and spend $120? Because movie tickets are a lot more expensive now, on beer, wine, food, and a movie for this experience. And if I say yes, then at that point I know I got something that's a little bit, you know, fiery and something that I want to develop and work on.
Right.
And that being said, I used to have a rep. I used to have a manager. I've got an agent now. But, you know, a lot of times, like, you can send a script to somebody and you've got that burning fire and you saying, yo, this is good. And either they're not going to read it or they're going to read it and have, like, this is the problem with screenwriting and movies. It's all subjective. And I might have a rep who might not like genre films as much as I do. But if I'm like, yo, dude, it's like Brain Damage meets this, it's like a different language to them.
Yeah.
But if you get excited and you say, I need to write this, and you'll find an audience.
Right.
And this is my analogy I always say, and it's a good thing. So if any juggalos are listening, this is my true thing. If members of Insane Clown Posse, they fill up stadiums of fans and people hate them. And that's the thing. They've got an audience. You just need to know your audience.
Right.
So if you're writing The Human Centipede Part 7, you know, you're not going to be submitting it to a romantic comedy competition, you know, something like that. So, you know, you find the people who are going to gravitate towards you, that respect, you know, these ideas and or are open to challenging themselves. Then you're in a situation where, you know, the sky's the limit, because people are going to say, well, you're thinking outside the box. Every year, there's always going to be Christmas movies, talking dog Christmas movies. You know, that's what sells in Hollywood. But to get a Swiss Army Man, you know, something that's outside of the box. And being a guy who's written projects that were close to going, and then big studios announced very similar projects that kill mine, I started thinking from my right side of my brain. I'm assuming that's the part I should be thinking about. So whatever part of the brain where it was just like, what could I do that nobody else will write?
Right.
There's always going to be similar stories, but what can I do that'll put my spin on it that I know nobody is either this messed up, and I say messed up, but in a means where it's messed up but enjoyable.
Right. But
not a hostile movie, but
I think that comes back to your voice as a writer. So, I mean, you have a very distinct voice on the page, even if you're not writing horror, because you veered off from that a couple times.
I've done kid stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You still have a distinct voice. Do you feel like that's something that you honed over the years of what you just talked about, of like this and this and thinking in different ways and stuff? Or have you always been like, yep, this is my tone, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think writing evolves through the people, through the scripts you read, through the people you know, through the other writers that you work with, where you might see how they like write something down and you're like, oh man, that's really clever and cool. I'm going to use that in my next one. I love that, because writing's always evolving, and it's the best thing you could do is you could surprise an exec, a producer, you know, a rep, because they might have read something of yours like, you know, 2-3 years ago, and then it did really well, placed in some big competitions, and then you're like, hey, this is my follow-up project. It just placed in here. We're taking it around town. Give it a read. And then they can see the evolution of you as a writer. Because if you're just kind of like always doing the same thing, there's nothing wrong with staying within genre, but there should be a reason to kind of challenge yourself and do subgenres with it. If you're going to be the guy who just makes zombie movies, you're going to be just known as the guy who makes zombie movies. But if you're a horror guy who you've got Survivor, like survival horror, you've got possession, you've got creature features, at least then they could say, here's someone who's ingrained in that world. Mm-hmm. And every now and then it's cool to take a palate cleanser. I've got comedies that I've written for myself. I've done a action comedy feature that I took out and people loved it. And it's just like, people are like, well, we expect horror from you. I'm like, no, you expect entertainment.
Right.
And I think that as long as people understand who you are as a writer and your brand, you can give like a kid's show with your stuff to it. There's a reason why Eli Roth is doing horror movies. He's doing reality shows. It's because the brand and it's what he brings to it.
Right. Exactly.
So I feel like, by any means, it's like Scooby-Doo. You get your regular Scooby-Doo, you get your Christmas Scooby-Doo, you get your Halloween Scooby-Doo. Just know who you are as a writer and be okay with growing, changing. Because if you're just doing the same types of stories and the read is not fun for a reader, I'd rather read a script that's a blast and easy to read than a 90-page script that takes me 3 hours.
Right.
Because I've read those.
Yeah.
Where you're like, why is there like giant chunks of like all this action? I'm like, it needs 3 sentences. Do it. Move on.
Sure.
So I don't know. I read so many scripts that's what I kind of look for. If it's
I was going to ask you, like, you mentioned earlier, the read should be good.
Yeah.
Like, you can recognize a good read. And is it...
You gotta have a good flow to it.
Yeah. Is it that if there's surprises, like, what makes a good read?
Well, I think it's never being ahead of the story. That's always good. Enjoying the character, structure, formatting. Like, if someone gives me a script and it's done on, like, Microsoft Word, I'm like, no. I always like to say that if you want to be a professional in anything, you have to have the tools to do it. Final Draft or, professional screenwriting software, aside from Final Draft. Things like, understanding format, structure. And if you don't, we've got the internet. There's all these different like screenwriting groups and different organizations where they can help you hone and learn this skill if you really want to do it.
Right.
There's plenty of writers who they just are like, I wrote a script and they take that one script and that's all I have for like 8 years. I'm like, no, you should be generating content and different ideas, and at the very least, a couple log lines a day. That way, if you do meet someone, they're like, well, that script you've been holding on to for 8 years, it's good, but it's not for us. What else you got? And so you got to have something ready. Because otherwise they're going to be like, oh man, one hit wonder, and that's it.
Right, and then they move on to the next person who does have a bunch of projects ready. For you, where do you see yourself within this next year, 5 years, and then what's sort of like your big ultimate goal for yourself? Do you want to direct? Like, where do you see yourself?
It's funny. Like, I've got 3 features right now in different stages of development, 2 that are hopefully going to be going next year, 1 that I'm writing myself that I'm going to self-finance and direct myself, just because I get to the point where I'm like, at some point you want to have your hands on it, and if you've got all these stories and these characters that you're building in your head and you watch enough movies and you see the movies that are coming out and you want to emulate them and you want to do your own thing, I've done the shorts, I've directed reality TV. Mm-hmm. I think you get to the point where you're like, get a great DP, work together, and just get every shot you need to tell a great story and to put people out there and let people know that, hey, you can do this too. You're not just some dude who's sitting in your garage going, nah, story. Right. So that's important to me, just to grow as a storyteller. Within the year, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to sell another project or 2, produce other projects for other writers. It's funny because I wrote in 2019 that Stay Out of the Attic, and that took me roughly a month and a half to write, and then within a month of that it was sold.
Right.
And then it came out the next year on Shudder, and then it was also really, really quick with our other project, Glorious. We got that in March of 2020, major pandemic, and we were able to get that one filming in June of 2021. Mm-hmm. And so then it already came out, and so a really, really quick turnaround. I'm trying like hell. I've got a wonderful a couple producers involved on my hit list project. Mm-hmm. We started casting, and then we got a great director, Padraig Reynolds, to hopefully be filming it next year, because that one was optioned multiple times. Mm-hmm. It was partially financed, and then the pandemic happened.
Right.
I'm like, and since then it's like rewriting it and modernizing it, because you've got to always keep updating your babies, because at some point there's no rotary phones and you got to update your script and all that stuff. And so did that, and so hopefully that one's going to be shooting next year, either in the States or we're looking at in I think Brussels or something like that. So that'd be really cool. I've got another one that I'm working with the director of Friedberry, which is awesome dude in South Africa, and it's Friedberry is like a body swap alien movie where like this dude gets abducted by aliens and the alien like lives inside his body and rages in the city. So it's got like elements of Crank to it, and it's really, really fun. So we're working on that and out to cast right now, which is exciting. I got my project that we're taking out right now, which is like a survival horror that happens inside a really gross environment that I can't really talk about, but it's awesome. And if we get this made, it's a very much an A24 movie. And so I'd love to be able to get that one out. We just went out to some cast and just trying to get these attachments. That way all these other companies, they're looking for content right now.
Right.
And to have the track record of saying, okay, State of the Attic was one of Shudder's most watched movies. Glorious is, I think, at 87%. It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. You know, I like to think that I'm a part of this ingredient that's kind of making these projects successful.
Yeah.
Whether it's story, whether it's just championing them, whether it's bringing the right people. And so I'd like to be able to keep doing that. And while I'm doing that, I still work in reality TV and fostering those relationships. So the goal is finish this new screenplay. I'm sure I will write 3 or 4 more next year. Hopefully options sell, get those other 2 in physical production, and just kind of keep growing and going on the ride and working with young writers and doing all that fun stuff.
You write incredibly fast. What's your process? Do you outline completely and then sit down and final draft?
Really meticulous outline. Like, this is how I do it. It's like literally I sit down, I put my beer, or whatever I've got. I put my Mountain Dew there in case you're not 21. And so I sit down and I go, well, what do I want to write? What projects, what movies have come out that have inspired me? I love The Descent. I want to have my own movie that's like The Descent. What can I do that has a claustrophobic environment, but I can make it my own? I think about that. I come up with a log line. Once I'm really happy with the log line, I will take that log line, I'll pitch it out to a few friends, and they say, yo, that's awesome, or yo, you got to check this movie. It's just like that. It came out yesterday, like it's on Hulu or something like that. I want to make sure that it's something that's unique, original, that has my voice. And at that point, I will then do what I like to call the Wikipedia plot outline, where I go and I just do paragraphs of this is the story, this is the character, this is what happens. And you're able to track it in paragraph form. I then transform that, and I keep that copy into a traditional outline with scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. And so by the time I'm done with that, I know this story inherently.
Okay.
And I could just sit down and I could say, okay, I need to get 3 or 4 good pages. I'm not one of those writers who can knock out 20 pages a day. Right. Even if I'm on hiatus from a reality show, I would like to get 4 or 5 solid pages that I'm editing as I'm writing. That way, it's not that vomit draft. Because when you get that vomit draft, you're like, well, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this.
Sure.
I'd rather spend the time earlier to have a really polished, instead of rough cut one, let's say a fine cut of a draft.
Sure.
That way I can then jump back into it, do another polish with grammar. And, everything from punctuation, because I'm such a stickler for that. Because, even if I get a script, I'm like, yo, they don't have punctuation here. I'm like, y'all, you just had to hit a key.
Right.
So I'm like, I just tell myself, like, if I'm going to ask somebody, an executive, a rep, a friend to read this, I want to make sure that it is done with kid gloves, that I'm not wasting their time, that they don't have those feelings of like, yo, why didn't Jay put an exclamation point in here? What the hell's up with these italics? I want to make sure that it is an easy read for them. Right. I want to make sure it's a fun read for them. And I also want to make sure that there is no issues with, the story or whatnot. So once I'm done with it, I know people who give me a script, they're like, yeah, I just finished it last night. I'm like, well, have you reread it? No. I reread it until the point where I'm reading it and I can say the words in my head before I read them on the page. At that point, I say, I'm done. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. And so at that point, I give it out, and I get my notes, and I'll address notes, and then we're out to market.
You're like an efficiency machine.
That's what my wife calls me, too.
An efficiency machine?
Yeah, but not in a nice way. He's efficient.
Hey, you made a kid. You gotta be okay there, right? Is that what we were talking about?
I guess, yeah. I also had a vasectomy. So, guys, if you want to do vasectomies, 20 minutes, there's a great place in UCLA where they let you choose the music you listen to. So my recommendation is picking either a Metallica song or a Cody and Cambria song, because all you need is one song and you're done. And neuter and spay your pets.
Let's just talk about. Let's get back to normal things.
Molly's rolling around.
Okay, so I think we touched on this, but let's just get it in a clear way.
Yes.
How were you first introduced to ISA, and then what brought you onto the development slate?
I found out ISA actually I was working on a show called Botched, and my buddy Travis Oppengorth, he was, I believe, the year before one of the writers to on the map. And so I was talking to him, and he does his own types of projects. He's read me, I read him, and he goes, there's this group, and what I used to know about was more about writing groups, not really like networking groups of writers. And so he goes, they meet every Thursday. It's this place in Busby. I'm like, I could walk there. That's awesome. And so he invited me, and I went, and I got to meet everybody on day one. And it felt nice because a lot of times, like, you've got different types of writers. You get the writers who want to direct. You get the writers who lock themselves in a little dark cave, who cannot talk to people because they create the characters and they let their characters be their voice. And so you had this whole hodgepodge of people. And for me, it became like going to camp and just getting to hang out with all these different crews of people. And everybody that worked there was so kind. And I just started putting myself out there with the different, like the fast track and emerging screenwriters. And I would apply like anybody else because, even rep writers, you want to make sure your stuff's good. That's the thing. And at that point, I wasn't repped. I made the hit list. I made the Young and Hungry list. And I was just, networking with you guys. And I ended up doing the fast track. And I think both times I placed in top 5, top 10. And that was then after, I think we announced, Stay of the Attic. I think that's when I was also offered. Yeah, exactly. Because I remember doing that interview. That's when I was invited to be a part of your development slate. And so I think, the reason why I was lucky enough to get there is because I'm always actively doing. I'm networking, and if people come up to me like, yo, Jay, I really want to get this to so-and-so, what can I do? I never like to think like, a lot of people think, oh, this writer's my competition. Nobody's your competition out here.
Right.
No one's going to steal your idea and put their name on it. You've got ants, you've got bugs life. That's the type of thing, and that's what happens. And so as long as you protect yourself and you do WGA and copyright and all that stuff, that's all good. But I was always at the point where I'm like, going to the ISA events felt like going home. Because it was like, here are writers, here's actually a group of people that are advocates for writers.
Right.
Which is really unheard of, because everybody tells you it's like, no unsolicited, don't take this, and you're kind of like, well, yeah, submit this and we'll consider you, and if we'd like you, then we'll take your stuff out.
Yeah.
Craig's been incredible to me. Felicity's been awesome. Molly, Shayna, I haven't had any bad experience. I think just the ISA, there's a lot of companies that do similar things, but you guys were the only company that brought people together. And I love that, because that's how some people might find a writing partner.
Right.
That's how somebody, who might not have the capabilities to pitch to anybody, or parents who think what they do is dumb, to have an audience. And so I like them. Then you'd have great speakers. And for me, it became exciting because it would be like, oh, cool, so-and-so speaking, and I get to be a part of it. I was a part of the pitch competition, and I got to pitch, which was a lot of fun. And I just think, the best thing you could do as a writer, as an artist, is just you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And that's why ISA was always good to me. And I talk to you guys constantly whenever there's like a little success, or it's a nice
you
thing.
are really good at that. You're really good at sharing. There's two things that you're really good at. You're really good at sharing your own personal successes in a way that doesn't feel like, wow, you know what I mean?
It doesn't feel like stinky.
Yeah, and then two, you help other writers tremendously, and I think that that's one of the things for me that sets you apart from a lot of people that I know, or even people in the industry, is that there's never been a time where you haven't offered, oh, let me get that to so-and-so. Oh, hey, I know someone who might. You're just this really great person who connects people. And besides, and what that does is then other people want to help you too.
Yeah. Well,
that it opens it up, and then it's this wonderful environment of people who are helping each other for the sake of helping each other, not for, well, what do I get out of it?
But there's still a lot of people who want that too. There's still a lot of people who with their hand out. And, I always come from the land of like, being kind, work hard. Because if someone already did the work, and they said, hey, I made a pitch deck, I did this placed in this, would you set your eyes on it? I will always say, give me the first 10 pages. And if I'm hooked, send me the rest of the script.
Right.
And there are people who live outside of California. and they don't have access to some of these folks.
Yeah.
And so if I could be a champion, if I could say, yo, I read this script, it's really cool, it's something I'm going to get behind, you should give it a read.
Right.
I've helped people get representation. I've helped people get into big contests. I've helped people get jobs. I just, I think the best thing you could do, because anytime, not even as a writer, but as a creator, you need to have an army, a legion of friends, fans, advocates, because this is not easy stuff.
Yeah.
Other people are out partying, going on Tinder, swiping on things. Instead of doing that, I'd rather be at home and creating a world and something that I know that I can see the value in.
Right.
And if I see the value, I can then hopefully persuade and pitch other people to see the value too.
Yeah.
Because that's how, if a project gets greenlit, that's how, at sometimes like hundreds of people, they get work. They get to put food on the table, but you also get to see your, words come to life.
Right.
So it's not just like, I look at the big picture. The big picture for me is like, cool, we played Fantasia for Glorious. I was intricate with getting that movie made, and I'm so excited to see what's going to be the trajectory for the writers, because it's doing really well. And I was able to, set some great things up and build a set and make an awesome movie. And, it's never the me. It's always about how can we do this together.
That was great. Thank you.
Well, yeah.
So just going to finish it with just a couple fun questions.
Those were fun. Come on.
What's your favorite word?
I use a lot of 4-letter words. I'm not going to lie. So I used to say fuck a lot, but I don't do that anymore with the kid.
Right.
So you're going to bleep me out, right?
No, it's going to stay in there.
My favorite word. I like shrapnel. I use that one a lot.
Okay.
Shrapnel's good because it's like you get to use that for like weaponry, but also body parts.
Right. Oh
After
God.
said weaponry, so I try to use shrapnel once in every project. I'm a huge Alkaline Trio fan, so instead of blood, it's always crimson. So
Nice. What is? I know that you have a good answer for this. What's your most annoying pet? What's your pet peeve of typos or grammatical errors?
I think no punctuation, spelling. Everyone's going to say there, and there. I'm like, easy enough if you're reading something over and over again, you're going to miss things. I just think, punctuation's always key. If you're missing punctuation, I'm like,
Yeah.
And everybody's good spell check.
Standard. If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
3 wishes?
Then don't wish for more wishes.
Oh, man. I wish this interview would never end. I think, truthfully, it's just, I'd like to see the people that I've been coming up with and working with, I want to see them be able to have that moment of, holy crap, we did this. Because there's something really magical about seeing your movie on the big screen and people screaming and laughing and hopefully sometimes walking out on it, but in a good way because it's too much. Because when Attic came out, it was straight to Shudder. We played a few festivals, but it was all remote. And so it didn't really count. But going to Fantasia and seeing how excited the fans were, at that point you're like, okay, this is cool. Because it's like whenever you make reality TV, you're not like watching it on a big screen with everybody else.
Right.
You do it, you make your episode, the editor cuts it, they throw in some graphics, and voila, you've got a reality show. With this, it's just like, everything from script to casting to locking in locations, props, effects. Then you get into the post world, and there's something magical about seeing your ideas, your vision, even though the director might change what it is, but you're the writer of it coming to life. I wish I could have like my friends and even non-creative friends experience that, because you kind of like, the hair, rises up and stuff like that. And that's a wish. I think that's something, I think, I'd love for that to happen, more loyal friends and whatnot, and just keep working together and keep creating is really, really important to me, because if you've got a great group of people, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're doing a 16-hour day and you got your friends and you need to make blood.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. It's like horror summer camp is what I call it. And then I guess my final wish, I'm like, the little selfish thing would be just because you do spend a lot of time in this world and you push aside, obligations, whether it's going out to parties or, locking yourself away and your kids growing up while you're trying to write and whatnot. I want to be able to sell another one of these projects, and I want my daughter to come to set. I'd love for her to be in some part of it, even in background, and I'd love for her to be able to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
I think that is awesome.
Yeah.
Because at this age, she's 4.5. She wants to make stories. She likes scary things. And so I think for me to be able to share that with her, but not, make her a weird, weird's good, but not to be like that, like, oh no, there's that goth kid,
Yeah.
I want her to understand like there is art in this. Making monsters, they're scary on screen, but there's a dude just like your dad who's in a warehouse building it.
Yeah.
So I want her to be able to experience that too. That, and also, if you guys know anybody, get me on the blood list. That'd be freaking cool.
Okay.
Kelly Marsh, what's up? But yeah, no, I'm serious. Like I think I've been so lucky because I put a lot of money. I put money where my mouth is. Essentially, I put my applied to the contest. I pitch. I query constantly. Like my mailbox, like I've had to like upgrade my Gmail account because I'm sending so much out with attachments and pitch decks, and I think you do the work, you'll see the results. And so, it takes time to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I'm on my creative journey too.
Yes.
So.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You were amazing. I hardly had to ask you anything. You were just like rolling to the next thing.
Yeah, I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can tell you had some coffee this
morning. I didn't.
You didn't?
And I left my Red Bull at home. So I was like, oh man, I'm going to go find a Starbucks after this.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being here. That was amazing. And I actually learned some new information about you. So it was good. Thanks.
Whenever you want me, you got me. I can't wait to do all these ISA events back in public, hopefully sooner than later. And I'm just very appreciative of the organization, everybody that works there. It's nice to have a company and multiple people championing you. It kind of makes my black heart feel a little bit better.